Well, I think this might be it. I keep inviting people, but they'll get here when they get here if they're interested. So I'm not a pushy person, so it's just like if you're interested in this, we'll just chat about it. But so we're going to dive into chapter 2 today. We're going to read the first 15, and this chapter is actually titled "Contents of the Gita Summarized." So as we get through this one, it's going to start making more and more sense because this is really kind of where the Gita begins. They kind of had the setup of the battle and all that stuff, and we had chapter 1 of all the confusion, and Arjuna being like, not gonna do it, and then chapter 2, Krishna really begins teaching and really diving in. So, like I said, we're gonna read 1 through 15, and these are really perfect verses because they introduce the problem, which was, of course, Arjuna's weakness, the correction, which is Krishna's first words, and then it also gives us the foundation, like one of the ultimate foundations of bhakti, which is soul versus body. So we start to dive into that even in these first 15. And the theme really for these first 15 is from confusion to truth, because obviously we all know that Arjuna, like we said, Arjuna was like, what? And Krishna really kind of lays the theme out that you're not this body. And really all of chapter 2, we get to dive into almost an analytical study of the material body as well as the spirit soul, and working with and without attachments, to results as well as characteristics of a person that is fixed in the conception of the real self. So up to this point, Arjuna had been overwhelmed and, of course, had chosen not to act. And like we said, it ended in confusion. Well, now we're back in chapter 2 where Krishna begins to speak for the first time and everything starts to shift. And like I said, it's titled Contents of the Gita Summarized, and that's really because the subject matter, we touch on karma yoga, jnana yoga, and a glimpse into bhakti yoga. So, yeah, let's just dive in. We'll read 1 through 3 and then chat about that for a second. So, chapter 2, text 1. Sanjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudana, Krishna, spoke the following words. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. 3. O son of Partha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. Krishna starts to challenge Arjuna here. He's saying, where's this weakness coming from? It's not befitting of a warrior. And it's like, don't yield to this weakness. It's ridiculous. And kind of like we were talking about on a couple sessions ago, Arjuna, while it may seem like he's got his stuff together and maybe his heart's in the right place, it's not. It's misplaced compassion that Arjuna had. And Krishna calls this impotence of heart because spiritual life requires strength, not avoidance. And I think that's one thing that he kept trying to avoid because he just really didn't want to face his dharma, like we talked about. Now, one interesting thing here that Prabhupada points out in the purport of text 1, if you notice in the verse, he calls Krishna Madhusudana. And what the purport kind of touches on this, and I thought it was kind of interesting, so I'll read this. Material compassion, lamentation, and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. Compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. The word Madhusudana is significant in this verse. Lord Krishna killed the demon Madhu, Now Arjuna wanted Krishna to kill the demon of misunderstanding that had overtaken him in the discharge of his duty. So I thought that was kind of a neat thing to really touch on there, because spiritual life isn't about escaping difficulty. It's more about facing it with clarity. So, calming your mind and just centering yourself to see the path ahead of you and the correct path, right? Now, as far as how we apply those type of teachings to us, like in a regular life, of course, we can't avoid hard truths. We have to face those. And of course, unfortunately, since we're human, we sometimes confuse emotion with wisdom. And, you know, it's funny, a lot of people say, follow your heart, but it's sometimes the heart lies too. And so you really have to run it through a lens of like just meditating on your direction. And this chapter here really instructs us to self-reflect, self-realization, by an analytical study of course, the material body and the spirit soul. So that's one thing that, again, is one of the pillars of bhakti, is that we are not this body. This realization is possible when one works without attachment to fruitive results and is situated on the fixed conception of the real self. So kind of what that means is, if we're not setting out to try to be the next big thing, get the next, trying to get like the next rung on the ladder, like of the promotion, and, like anything material related really has no bearing, because it's not feeding your soul. So, and that's the thing though, is you can actually achieve those things and it'd be a good thing if your heart is in the right place and it's not based out of ego. So there's, sometimes there's a misconception that like all billionaires are bad and stuff, which, I mean, there's obviously a bunch of them that are and are corrupt. That's how they got where they were at. But there's also some that are philanthropists and some that do good and some that don't even, I've heard of several stories of like, certain, I don't know, like athletes or even like, like artists or actors that donate a ton of their money. So, I mean, if your head and heart are in the right spot and you don't have ego, that's a big deal, because that's one of the hardest things for us to deal with, is ego, because it's just human nature not to want to get crapped on or not to. But ultimately, what do I care if this guy cuts me off? Like, I'm still driving straight, like, I mean, it really, to let go of that stuff and realize that none of this material stuff matters, that it's secondary to us realizing we're a soul. I think that's very important. I think it's probably about number 67 for you there, Aaron. I think it's where I'm at. Yeah, because I think you have the hardback. So yeah, I'm getting ready to start text 4. We'll read 4 through 8. So all right. So text 4. Arjuna said, "O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counteract with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship? It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood." 6. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we killed the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it, even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like that of the demigods in heaven. So, it seems like he's spiraling here, but he's actually surrendering because he literally is just is like, tell me what's best for me. I'm done here. And before it was just a lot of giving up and throwing in the towel, but not, all right, what do you got for me? Like, how can I be better? It was, he wasn't really seeking direction, but now he's trying to figure it out. How can I fight my teachers? I'm confused, but I'm your disciple, so please instruct me. And I think Arjuna's intelligence got bewildered in trying to understand the implementation of Dharma. So I think he just got kind of worked up in himself trying to figure out what am I supposed to do here? Like, am I, and I mean, I think that's pretty common to all of us. I know me personally, I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing in my life, man. Like I think I've tried to figure it out, but I think that's why, um, I think that's why spiritual life is so important because I don't like a lot of people may look at it like a crutch, but to me, it's not that. It's more like something that I'm like, all right, allows me to stop and focus and kind of meditate for the moment and just like let it out and try to just wait and it's not like you hear an audible voice, but just wait to be like, all right, my mind's calm. Is this the direction I need to go? Or which way, and I think the key point of that is just slowing everything down and just figuring out your direction and a lot of that happens in silence. And we all know how loud and everything this world is, It's what you got?
Can I comment?
Of course.
I was gonna say, I think like, and this is just coming from the soul of a restorative yoga teacher. I think because once the mind starts to slow down, we can start to hear the answers. And like when you're walking a spiritual path, the answers are coming from your heart, not
Mm-hmm.
and so when you can get the mind to kind of quiet, which takes forever.
Yeah.
One of my teachers used to say, give your mind so much space that it just runs itself quiet.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? And you'd be like, just lay there. And I'm like, but I can't shut up the thoughts. He's like, exactly, let them run.
Yeah.
Let them run.
Well, and
run. And then once your mind quiets down, then you can hear the answers, what are coming out of your heart. And
mm-hmm.
Like, does this feel good? Does this feel good? And then it doesn't become like, what is my mind telling me? But it's like, how do I feel in this moment? And if you feel good, it's meant for you. And if you don't feel good, you just got to kind of put your ego down and walk away.
Well, and like
I haven't figured out how to put my ego down yet.
Well, that's part of the journey, right?
Right. Yeah. That's my mission for this summer.
Perfect.
How do I unpack my ego?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely easier said than done, but yeah, it's and to your point about meditating and slowing your mind, that a lot of like Buddhists and stuff call that monkey mind, to where your mind is trying to get calm and then it's like, oh man, I forgot about the grocery. I forgot about what are we doing this weekend? You're just like all over the place. And some of the teachers that have taught me on meditation, it's like you just have to call it out and just be like, so you're sitting there and just trying to focus on your breathing. It's like, okay, thank you, bye. And then I'll just try to go back to just focusing on your breathing, just trying to get back to center. So it's very difficult, but it takes years and years of practice. And I was talking to somebody the other day. I was like, I can totally understand why somebody would just like move out to the woods and just like meditate, just like because like this world and just like living in the city, sometimes it doesn't get quiet. It's just like people are calling me on the phone and there's always something going on. And I'm like, man, that sounds kind of awesome for a little bit, just to be away from everything and disconnected. But anyway, but yeah, so Arjuna's intelligence, I think he was just trying to figure out his dharma, and that's why he got so twisted up. And this is really the turning point of the Gita, because he's surrendered to Krishna, saying, tell me, man, which way am I supposed to go? Arjuna stopped arguing at this point. He's just like, just give me some direction. And at this point, he really accepts Krishna as his guru. And I think that's one of the things that I've noticed in my personal life, as well as with other people that I know, is that real spiritual life really begins when we admit we don't know shit. If we don't know anything, then it's like, okay, I don't have the answer, so I release you. Like I'm done, and I'm just like, all right, just what do you have for me, world? What connects with me? What helps me grow? What gives me some meaning and purpose, and fills me up? That's really um, what it's about, and we can really apply those type of things with humility, willingness to learn, of course, and letting go of ego, like we were just talking about, and just saying I don't know anything, and just being open minded about these things, because kind of as we were talking, unless the senses are controlled, that's the big thing with bhakti, is trying to focus on controlling your senses, and unless we control those senses, it's very difficult to elevate to the platform of knowledge. If we don't release ego, and we just really try to focus on, all right, I don't know anything. Until we let go of that stuff, then we can start receiving knowledge. And of course, without that knowledge and devotion, there's not really a chance of what they call liberation, like within the Bhagavad Gita, of trying to um, enhance your consciousness, so to speak. So, of course, that's easier on paper, reading it, than it is like in action. But to me, I don't know, I've used this analogy before, but it's really like the bumpers at the bowling alley. It's like, I think I'm going this way. Okay, you just have to keep correcting yourself, and that's how you grow. And just knowing, okay, well, maybe I need to go this way a little bit more, or maybe try to eliminate this from my life because obviously it's a hindrance, or and it's not necessarily rules and regulations, but just ways to try to figure out how you can improve your clarity of mind, and as well as connect with something deeper. Let's see here. Let's read 9 and 10. All right, so 9. All right, 9. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. 10. O descendant of Bharata, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. So it seemed like he was all in, and then he's just like, yeah, never, I'm not going to fight. Just fall silent. Just sits there, and Krishna is getting ready to speak to him. And I think to me, it cracks me up just thinking of Krishna on this chariot in the middle of the battlefield, just smiling at this guy sitting down. I'm just like, what are we doing here, man? We're between two giant armies, and you're just sitting here, and because up until this point, they're really friends. They've started the transition of guru and student, but it hasn't fully switched yet. So I think we're still seeing a glimpse of two friends here being like, what's my guy doing down here? Come on, man. But the good thing, and we literally just talked about this, is silence equals readiness to receive. So that's really being able to stop and just listen. And Arjuna's just going to quit talking here because he's ready to receive. And I think that's the point that we got to get to, is where we have so much noise in our heads and in life and just everything, to just take that time to just stop and just like sit in silence. For me, in the mornings, it's very helpful for kind of setting the mood for the day, and just dealing with, all right, I'm going to be on the freaking computer for 10 hours. All right, am I going to deal with these people at work? It'll be fine, but it's all about setting my intention and starting the day off right. But it all starts with silence. Silence, kind of gets you for some readiness and ready to receive. And that way he can accept Krishna's teachings in this. All right, so 11. So this is where Krishna begins to start teaching here in 11. So 11, the Supreme Personality Godhead said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. So this is like a big verse. Like, I think it's pretty awesome. Like, those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. So, as you may or may not know, one of the beliefs in Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, Bhakti, whatever you want to call it, is of course reincarnation. And that's what Krishna is touching on here, is because, and it goes back to we're the soul. So our soul moves from body to body. And the he wasn't the thing with Arjuna though is he wasn't wise because he was arguing. The reason he wasn't wise was because he was arguing about Dharma Sastra, which essentially is religious principles, and he wasn't. He was arguing about Dharma Sastra, which is kind of religious principles. Should I fight? Should I not fight? Is this morally right? Um, but though he was, let me back up. Sorry, I'm getting tongue tied here. He was arguing that Dharma Sastra was greater than Artha Sastra, which Artha Sastra is like politics or sociology. But he didn't know that what's called Jnana Sastra, which is knowledge of matter, soul, and the supreme controller of both, is even greater. So, what that means in a nutshell is he's trying to argue between, like politics. Well, there's politics here. I mean, he was my teacher. This is my guru. He's on the other side. That's my uncle. And there's all this stuff. But well, and then religiously, maybe I shouldn't kill anybody. But again, knowledge of the supreme controller, matter, and the soul is actually greater than that. That's kind of goes back to what we were talking about as far as dharma. So you may think this is the path I'm supposed to be on, but if it's not the path that's been laid out before you, then it's going to be a rough road. But let's see here. This so I wrote down a note here. I was trying to see what it said. So I had this thought of like this analogy, because Arjuna sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but he really has no clue what he's talking about, and it's just because it hasn't been revealed to him yet. And the analogy that I wrote down was, it's kind of like if you had a PE teacher trying to teach chemistry. They may know, oh yeah, you need to bring in the oxygen, like in your lungs, if you're working out, and like they may know a little bit about it, but the chemistry teacher is going to school them on it, and vice versa. The chemistry teachers, I mean, if it's anything like my science teacher, this guy maybe weighed 90 pounds, and I guarantee he's not climbing up a rope or anything. So Arjuna had a lot of knowledge and was a very amazing and astute and studious and just like smart and a freaking great warrior. But he didn't have all this, and we'll eventually get into this as we get deeper into the Gita, because there's actually a chapter called the confidential knowledge, and that's where Krishna basically cracks the egg open and is like, all right, you're getting the whole thing now, buddy. Like I've tried to spoon feed you this stuff, and so that way you can digest it, but then it gets pretty deep and Arjuna gets his freaking mind blown later. So but it's he's laying the groundwork here, because Krishna is trying to tell him, like, you don't really know what you're talking about, because the wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. And I know we've all met people, and even sometimes I know I've had this problem before, is like we may sound wise, but we're completely confused. And that's okay. I mean, that's part of being a human, right? But I think a thing that this is touching on is that the body is born and is of course destined to be vanquished, and we'll eventually die. That's just part of living. We don't know if it's today, tomorrow. That's one of the things why the body is not as important as the soul. And what Krishna is touching on here is, if you know that and fully understand that if you learn that from him and from the Gita, that there's no cause for being sad. There's no cause for lamentation, regardless of the condition of the material body. And that's where it's kind of, for me, it's kind of a personal tightrope, because you don't like, I just went to like a funeral of my ex-father-in-law, and he passed away and battled with like disease and stuff. And it's like, I'm sad that he left this world, but also his soul just left. Like, there's just a meat sack laying there. There's nobody that's in there anymore, because once he passed, his soul moved on to another body. And the example that's always given a lot of times is how we, even living here in this material world, we change daily. So like the body I had when I was 5 isn't this one. The body I had when I was 15 isn't this one. These knees hurt, this back hurts. That stuff didn't happen before. You know what I mean? But it's tough to, because that's why I say for me it's a tough line, because I want detachment, but I don't want to be a dickhead, to be just to be honest. Like, you want to have compassion, you want to be, you want to release those things, but it's okay to show sympathy. I think that's sometimes one thing that gets lost in, like, if you just read this, it's like at face value, it's like, well, what's the matter? You're gonna die, and you move on. But it's hard to detach enough to avoid mourning. Emotions get in the way of remembering that our souls are eternal. It's those darn emotions, yeah. And that's exactly, like Faith said, that's exactly how it is. And the of course, this gross body, so to speak, and I don't mean like gross, I just mean like, well, some days it looks pretty gross in my opinion, but my my regular body here, it's inevitable, it's going to be gone. So why would I spend money on like putting stuff in my beard to make it darker? Like, it really doesn't matter, dude. Like, and I'll be out, that's like a struggle for me, because I'm like, oh my god, I'm like looking old. But I used to see people from my high school, and I'm like, God, those people look old. And now I look at myself like, oh my God, this is getting gray. I'm getting old, like, but it really doesn't matter. Like, this doesn't matter. But the soul is indestructible. So how can I feed that? How can I keep that growing? Because that doesn't change. That just moves on, and the soul is eternal. Let's touch on 12 and 13, because it really talks about that. Krishna dives more into that. So on 12, Krishna is speaking. Let me back up. I'm just going to read that one last verse again of 11. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. 12. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. 13. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober or peaceful mind is really what that means there. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So you just have to, you're not the body, you observe the world, and the soul, like I said, the soul is eternal. Krishna is explaining here that there was never a time we did not exist. There's never a time we won't cease to exist. The body changes, the soul remains. That's essentially the nutshell of what he's saying. And kind of like I was saying, we've changed from body to body just even in this lifetime. I mean, I look at my dad and he's like a carbon copy of me, or I guess I'm technically a carbon copy of him. But yeah, whatever. But it's like, I mean, I'm like, oh my God, that's how I'm going to look when I get old. And it's pretty neat to see, but it's also just like, we change. There's nothing we can do about it. And, the, the body is fleeting, and so just trying to focus on feeding the soul and remembering that we are a soul is really, like I said, core philosophy for bhakti yoga, is that we're not the body, we're the soul. And like I was saying, just like we move from childhood to adulthood, we move from one body to the next. This, of course, is, like I said, reincarnation. Or they call it samsara, where it's just the cycle of birth and death. Now, without giving too many spoilers, essentially what bhakti yoga is about is trying to break that cycle. Because why would I want to keep coming back here over and over and get in this world? Like, you want to break that cycle. You want to, that's essentially the liberation that they're talking about, is breaking the cycle of life and death. And there's, of course, they talk about the different yogas and things of how to get through there and how to get liberation. And we're going to dive into those like in the Gita, which is, to me, is very fascinating because there's multiple paths to get there. Some are harder than others to be able to achieve. Um, but ultimately, like I said, no spoilers, but like ultimately, bhakti is like one of the easiest paths because it's the path of love and devotion of how to achieve liberation. But yeah, it's but the thing that I love about like this section here is, to me, it's kind of comforting because it helps me understand and kind of helps me with the fear of death. Like I said, I keep getting older, so of course it's like, man, I better get my will in place for my kids and all this stuff. And it's kind of scary to think about, but I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just part of life. It's gonna happen, so get prepared. But it also helps me with my identity because I also don't care. Like, somebody's like, God, you really got a dad gut now. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. I mean, it's just my body. And just I think the release of attachment and those type of things is also what this helps me with. Not even like death, so to speak, but as people come and go from your life. I mean, some people look at that as like relationships dying off or whatever, releasing those people, not having that attachment. I mean, I think it should give us a peace of mind and not a, not almost like a card to be like, well, your body doesn't matter. Come here, let me punch you. Like, it's, I don't know. To me, it's very comforting to read that because then I don't have the attachment of, I still may feel like sadness. Like I said, I went to the funeral and I was like sad and like to see my son like upset, like because I was his grandfather, but like I don't like to see him upset, so it's like comfort him and be there for him. But and it's okay to grieve, but you just have to be reminded that our bodies are just in this material world and not eternal. But Arjuna, one thing that is interesting that I noted over here too was, as far as detachment, Arjuna really should almost be rejoicing by assisting them, so to speak, with their changing bodies. He should almost be. That's his dharma, is to fight these people. So as Krishna is laying this out for him, he should almost be like, well, this, I should be happy. I'm gonna help them, get into a new body. I mean, these guys are old anyway. And so I mean, it's kind of a weird to think about, but it's that's his dharma, is to be a warrior and help them get their old bodies, put them in new ones, I guess. And just I don't know, just such a change of the body kind of account for, that's the we have to find the balance between, of course, like enjoyment and suffering, and just the duality of things. That's really what we should try and to really to detach from. That's a lot of words, but all right. Let's read 14, and then we'll have 15 after that in a second. But let's read 14 and then talk about this a little bit. So 14. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O Sayana Brata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So what Krishna is talking about here is, like I said, happiness and distress. They come and go like the winter and summer months. Tolerate life's ups and downs. There's no reason to let these highs and lows impact you. These are temporary bodily experiences that we have, and again, it's easier said than done. But it's kind of like what it reminds me of. Like my therapist one time was like, you can never completely eliminate your anxiety. All you can do is eliminate the peaks and the longevity. And so that always stuck with me because it's like, all right, it's kind of the same thing. Like if I'm super down on myself, like, all right, this is not permanent. This is just something I'm going through because it's this material world and it kind of sucks in here. But I am choosing to be happy. I'm choosing to remember that I'm a soul and that this material world doesn't matter. So let's move on. Let's do what I got to do. But let me, as I say, pick myself up by the bootstraps and let's just move on. So it's okay to feel those things, but we just can't stay there. And I think that's the key to it. Is you have the duality, but we can't really be. You can't be bothered by it. You can acknowledge it, but then you have to move on. You have to grow because not everything that we feel is permanent or meaningful. Some things we feel are just things to pass through us and take a deep breath and kind of move on. Like emotional reactions, discomfort, resilience. Some of those things, it's just they hit you and then you move on. But again, like I said, easier said than done. But those are things to me, that's what I try to work on is how do I, all right, like I'm stressed about paying my bills or whatever, and it's like, all right, it'll work out. It always does. I mean, you haven't been kicked out of your house yet, so it's like everything's fine, man. You're just overthinking. You're just, your mind's reeling. Let me just stop, take a couple deep breaths. This is not important. It's important because I want to give my family, people I love a place to stay, food, and those things. So it's important. But in the grand scheme of things, it will work out the way it should. And that doesn't mean to not take action. That's the thing is like, I think a lot of people may read that and be like, it'll be fine. God will provide a job. And then they just lay on the couch, like you can't do that. Like you have to take action, because it's even, as we'll see here, and eventually, again, spoiler alert, Krishna tells him he has to do his dharma. So, the battle ends up happening, So it's like, you have to do what you have to do. Now, he struggled with it for a little bit. This is kind of a big book, So, we're not the first, nor will we be the last to struggle with what we're supposed to do with our life, But so that can't be something that holds us down. But
can I ask a question to try and gain some understanding here? Just to get some clarity. I know a lot of these ancient texts are written more as a metaphor, and they're written in the time that they were written to I guess, cater to the masses at that time. So it's hard for me to wrap my mind around a God that has created everything. Mm-hmm. To ask one of its followers to destroy parts of its creation violently, So are we supposed to be reading this under the premise that this is a metaphor and it's telling a grander story, that there's more between the lines, or do you think this is something that physically took place?
I definitely think the battle took place, and that's one thing that's I think is difficult for. It was difficult for me when I first got into bhakti, was that I have my view of God is based on Judeo-Christian God, and so when I instantly think God, that's what I think about, and so it's been very difficult for me, like in my beginning stages of like diving into this and like really trying to seek, because I'll give you a perfect example was like, I wanted to set up a little altar so that way I could, pray and just show, like, I've just seen people like place a Krishna on like a little stand and like pray to it and stuff. And for a long time, I'm like, oh my God, am I doing this right? Like, is he going to be pissed? Like if I'm not doing like the exact thing, but that's just the Christian fear in me of like, hellfire and brimstone and I'm going to do the wrong thing. And the thing that is difficult to kind of understand is that from my experience and my things that I have read, that Krishna is like, of course, he's literally known as like the most beautiful, most loving, like terms like Govinda and like, he's got all these different names because of his beauty and just like sheer love for people. But it essentially is, again, it goes back to your dharma and your karma. And those two things there are a balancing act between, so I'm trying to think of like a good example here. So, and I may have shared this one before, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I don't think. This is a funny one. So I heard a story one time, and this is, I mean, you can even look at like the animal kingdom, right? And so I'm trying to think. It was like I don't remember the succession, and I'm gonna butcher this so bad, but it was like there was a baby bird that just like popped open and was born, and there was I don't know, like a cat down on the ground that was like praying that a bird would, like food would be delivered to it. And then it looks up and sees this baby bird. And as the bird sees it coming, it's like, oh man, I wish I could be a dog to destroy that. Bird gets eaten. He's reborn into a dog. And then here comes this dog saying, I wish I had some food. And there's this cat here. And then the cat's like, oh man, I wish I was a tiger so I could get that dog. And then it gets eaten. And so, like, of course, the story just kind of keeps going on and on. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that death isn't really looked at the same way, as it is in America or in, Christian or even other, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Abrahamic religions, yeah. So death is actually not as feared as the other things, because and of course I just keep going back to Christianity just because that's how I was raised. But like, if you think of death in that context, you're like, oh my God, like, am I gonna go to hell, or am I gonna go to heaven, or like. So there's fear already instantly instilled into you through your death. So you're just worried before you even get there. That's not how Sanatana Dharma is. Sanatana Dharma is, of course you want to get out of this birth and death life cycle, but it's not, you're just going to move on to the next body. So what's it really matter? But you want to get out of that because the belief is, and I think, I don't know if it touched on it at all in like one of those books I gave you, but there's like the belief is there's higher planetary systems of like where the demigods reside and so forth and so forth. And people that are we'll say like, like a monk or something, somebody that's very devoted and lives a very strict life, they may get out of the cycle and go up to one of the higher planetary systems and live there for a while. But eventually that's not even permanent. They'll just come back down to Earth and like cycle back through. But the things that we learn or we don't learn in our previous lives are the things that we have to learn in the current life. So again, long story short, death isn't really looked at as like being a bad thing, so that's why it's apples and oranges. Again, it's our mentality is always like, oh my God, they're going to die, but they also weren't scared of death because they knew this wasn't their body. But also, I mean, you got to think too, this is a battle. So everybody's fighting with honor and, it's not all sneaky like it was back or like it is now in like Vietnam and, like hidden bombs everywhere. I mean, these people are literally lining up and everybody ready? All right, we're going to do this, I mean, then they're going at each other. So there was a lot more honor back then. So it was almost honorable to die in battle, So, I mean, I see your point as far as like, why would God be like, yeah, go ahead and knock these guys off, because, it sounds counterintuitive, because it's God created them. But without getting into like, anyway, it gets pretty deep. That's what I'm saying. So that's I may give you a little video for that one later because that one's a deeper one.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about it to help me digest some of this book. But yeah, I don't want to take away too much from your meeting.
No, you're good. I mean, I see what you're saying. Totally. Yeah.
I mean, the worst part of battles aren't always the deaths, right? Like there's so much more suffering that happens with the living from being a conquered people. And that's why it's hard to grasp a loving entity to condemn people to suffering, not just death.
Yeah. Now,
Uh,
I'll try to also give you like a brief rundown of the Mahabharata too, because the stuff that happened before this, you may not feel as bad about the people he's going to kill. You know what I mean? So, like, there's a lot of stuff that happened before this that is, I mean, we're talking like this, like Arjuna's side was enslaved. They beat and raped their women. Like, I mean, they were,
So
so it
would you
makes it
say,
in that context, even it makes it even more astounding that he's like, I don't know, man, if we should do this. That he was struggling that much even after all that they had done. You know, it's interesting.
would you would you say that, so for Arjuna going in, I he's fulfilling his dharma, which is to be the grand warrior, but he's also helping proliferate, I guess would be the word, the karma of the guys that he's getting ready to kill,
Hmm.
because they're the ones that are fighting for, so he's standing into or stepping into his dharma while they're receiving their karma on the other side because of the way shit went down in the Mahabhuta.
Sure. Sure.
that's a really valid point, but that just kind of makes an eye for an eye sort of a situation. I guess that's why it's been hard for me to
I
digest
think
this.
so. I think too that the key point though is Krishna is not really asking Arjuna to kill out of hatred or cruelty. Like I said, all this stuff happened beforehand, but that's kind of a moot point. Like it's like I said though, it's kind of interesting that Arjuna's still even questioning it, even after everything that had happened. But Krishna is not asking him to, out of hatred or conquest or cruelty. It has nothing to do with that. He's asking him to just fulfill his dharma. And it's kind of the analogy that I've heard before is it's almost like and this is kind of pretty crude, especially in current times, because of our political system. But anyway, like it's almost like if a police officer like shoots somebody that was doing something heinous, that that's his dharma is to stop them. Even though he killed them, there's no karma for that because that was his dharma. Because that's what he was supposed to be doing. Not killing, but he was supposed to be protecting, right? And so that's, like I said, it's a really crude example, but it's like kind of like a brief, kind of a brief talk about he's fallen his dharma in a situation where injustice and violence were already unavoidable. So it's not like, even if he was to stop and Krishna was like, no, we're not doing this, then these armies would still fight. But then, so I think it's the mentality of he didn't create the war for entertainment, or he didn't create it for some random violence fun, like it's just this was already laid out before Krishna had even spoke,
Okay.
Maybe getting there. It's a very interesting topic though, so I appreciate the question. Yeah.
I just don't have enough context to
Yeah, I'm with you.
to know the pieces yet.
And like I was saying, the conflict had already like escalated. Like I said in the Mahabharata before this, there was deception, abuse of power, repeated injustice. Like I said, there's one story where they just like, I don't remember if it's Arjuna's wife or one of his fellow people, but it's like dragging this woman by her hair naked through the town. Like, I mean, like just insane stuff, and there was failed peace attempts even before this battle was to occur. And like we said, it's dharma. It's not revenge. Krishna's dharma was to be a warrior. So his role, as a warrior at that time, his role is, of course, to protect justice, protect society, right, and to stand against tyranny. And that's basically what was going on there. It wasn't just go kill because violence is cool, So but yeah,
I understand that. I guess there's other Aramaic religions that, like Christianity, for example, right?
Yeah.
Christ says to turn a blind eye to that, to
Sure.
forgive those for the transgressed against us.
Yeah.
It's a really, really neat concept, but that also extreme pacifism creates, downward violence. But
and I think that's also where, if you dive into like the Bhakti philosophy, is what's called ahimsa. Like we practice ahimsa, which is nonviolence. So that's why a lot of people that are like devotees typically are vegetarian. Some are vegan, are because there's less karma involved in eating fruits and plants and vegetables than there is eating meat. So that's one of the reasons why I chose to be vegetarian even a long time ago, even before like I had any spiritual connection to it. That's just how I felt, and that's one of the things that resonated with me. But it's funny because I've had a similar question before, because if you read the Vedas, which is like the original text of like Hinduism and like spirituality, those they're doing fire sacrifices with animals. So I'm like, what the hell? Like, you're killing an animal, but we're supposed to be like ahimsa. But I guess from what I've been told, it's about the context of what it's happening. This is for a religious purpose. This is for your dharma. This is for so. I don't know. It's an interesting, it's a rabbit hole, man. It's just, because it's one of those things where, because I'm like you, like I said, I asked that question before too, because I'm like, in regards to the animal sacrifice and stuff, just because but again, there's a lot more deeper theology when it comes to that stuff, because there's different ages. There's the belief that we live in different ages. So what worked for the Satya Yuga age doesn't work for the Kali Yuga age, which is what we live in currently, is the Kali Yuga age, which is known for chaos, and we have lived shorter lives, and it's just like, I mean, literally, if you were to like Google and look up Kali Yuga and like the description of it, you're like, oh yeah, this is what we're living in. I mean, it's like to a T. But so I don't know. But yeah, I'll write that down and see if I can dive more into it, because to share with you, because it's just Krishna is trying to address morality, attachment, the soul, duty, and stuff. Where violence really isn't the point, but it's. I guess if violence were the point, there'd be no Gita, right? Because that's really not what he's talking about in there. It's just a byproduct of, I guess, the human nature, because that's one of the other things too, is that, again, with the Abrahamic religions, God's usually telling you to do stuff and like shaking his finger at you. That's how it's perceived, at least in my view. There's a lot of like, you need to do this, you should do this. If you don't do this, then this happens, and blah, blah, blah. Krishna he's a God of love, to where it's like, whatever you want to do, that's fine. If you want to worship me, I still love you. If you don't, that's cool. I still love you, and I think that's, him just trying to, that's why it's like, it was hard for me to wrap my brain around that, because, a lot of people will say that God is love, but they don't necessarily, teach that in some Abrahamic religions, So it's, anyway, that's very good question. That's a tough one. Because that's a deep one there. So I appreciate that. That's no, it's good, because it gets me thinking, and like gets me like, because like I said, sometimes I get wrapped up in my words, and just like my mind runs like a million miles an hour. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading this, trying to gain a little context, it seeing the calls of violence and saying that it was. Basically, I guess I picked up that these other people were deserving of violence. I'm like,
sure.
Then who gets to decide who deserves violence? But then it also made me think that, and because kind of the point of this class, right, is bringing us to the modern day.
Absolutely, yeah.
So wouldn't this almost be a calling for us to look at the people that are, destroying our planet or harming people in the masses? Are we called to do something about that to a violent degree, or are we supposed to?
Well, I mean, I don't think. See, there, like in the current setting, there's ways for us to address those things where we don't have to resort to violence. You know what I mean? There's ways that we can protest, we could get people to sign petitions to get things changed. There's other ways to go about, like just saying climate change or something like that. There's ways around it. So that's not like that's our option. You know what I mean? That's not. Is it going to be an option one day? Hell, I don't know. This world's kind of jacked,
Yeah. Well, hopefully not, right? Hopefully people can be like Faith, where they get into the legal system. And
exactly. And see, yeah, absolutely. Change from a mole on the inside, so I mean, there's in the current, and that's kind of the thing too, is like in the current situation, like I don't think violence is needed, because there's so many other ways for us to be able to. Now, that's one of the things too, is like that I've had luck of talking to some other people that are way more into this than I am and longer tenured, if you will, that like when I first started diving into it, like I had a Cincinnati Reds hat on, but it was a red hat, and I was in like a Zoom class. He was like, "What's that hat?" I was like, "Oh, it's Cincinnati Reds." He was like, "Oh, I thought it was a MAGA hat." I'm like, "Oh, hell no." I'm like, "No, that's not me, man." And then he's like, "Oh," and then I was like, "Well, I mean, whatever anybody's, because then I was like, oh God, did I offend him? Because like I didn't know him, so I'm like. I mean, whatever anybody's into, that's not my thing, He's like, "Oh, you would support that?" I'm like, "Oh God, now I don't know what to say, like, I mean, no, I don't support it." And he was like, and then he was making the point of, violence and all these things. A lot of those teachings go against Krishna's teachings, that like there's, they're worried more about how somebody's body looks instead of what their soul is. Their body designation, it doesn't matter if you're trans, black, white, who cares? That has nothing to do with your actual soul, So let people be who they want to be. Let people live how they want to live and just let them be happy, because it has nothing to do with their soul. And so it's like, I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, you scared me there because I didn't know which way this was going, I was but ended up being really, really cool. But all right, let me read 15 so we can button this up real quick, because I know we just hit an hour. So, and I appreciate y'all and I appreciate the question. So that was awesome. So 15. All right. "O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation." So again, that's kind of what we were talking about before. This is the qualification for a spiritual life. One who is steady in happiness and distress becomes eligible, because steadiness equals equals a spiritual qualification, like I said. And again, this kind of ties back into it. Following one's dharma or duty leads to jnana yoga, which is knowledge. That's the yoga of knowledge, from which arises mukti or liberation. And after that, there is, it's basically spiritual growth, So spiritual growth really begins when we stop being controlled by our own actions and reactions, And so that's really the bulk of 1 through 15 is just, I think I jotted down 5 big themes that kind of tie into these verses here in 1 through 15. That spiritual life begins with humility, that we are not the body, of course. The soul is eternal. Emotions are temporary. And of course, steadiness leads to growth. And I really love that, because it's a pretty big, brief synopsis of it. Because the thing that I think is interesting here about even what we're talking about is what Krishna is speaking to Arjuna on is actually shows up in some other traditions too. Like, I don't know how familiar you all are with like Stoic philosophy or Marcus Aurelius, but like he even kind of touched on this stuff, because I'm like a huge Stoic fan. Like, I love Stoicism. But I had two quotes from Marcus Aurelius here. The quote was, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Which is, of course, is exactly what Krishna is saying. And then this one here, I thought was really, really cool. The soul becomes dyed with the colors of its thoughts. And that's kind of like keeping your mind clear, filling it up with stuff that uplifts you, positive impact. And again, that's essentially what Krishna is teaching Arjuna here. Don't be controlled by temporary situations, but become steady, And kind of like what we were talking about before, chapter 1 ends in confusion. We begin with truth here in 2. And of course, we get the first truth of that we are not the body. And we should start to feel that this kind of shifts and is a little bit different than chapter 1, because it's, as Aaron has already pointed out, it's already starting to get kind of deep. And we're only 15 into the second chapter. But we're going to start seeing the foundations of bhakti philosophy and diving into that. And but with the Stoicism, I think it's pretty neat, though, because a lot of that was dealing with controlling your mind and your thoughts. But the Gita does take it a little step further and explains why we can do that. And it's because we aren't the body. We're the soul, so that's pretty neat. But that's pretty much all I had, So if you all had any other questions or anything. Yeah.
Will you send the 5 points?
Yeah, I can put them in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, or send them to you. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. If you
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to write them down. I got to plan a class for Thursday for the yoga festival. I'm doing like a 90-minute meditation at 6 p.m.
Nice.
So I think those 5 points that
you
read out, as you were reading them, I was like, damn, that'd be a good meditation class. And I was like, damn, I got to plan a meditation class.
Yeah.
I'll use those 5 points.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I'll definitely send them to you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think those would be good, 5 good points to hit on. Like, I'm doing 5 different meditations or styles of meditations in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to weave them through this whole thing. And I think that would be a good little kind of foundation to
absolutely.
If you don't care, that'd be awesome.
No, 100%. Yeah. So awesome.
I will definitely give you your props too. So
that's all right.
Around like, I don't know, 10 after 6 on Friday night, you feel a ping or you feel your download. Know it's coming from Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
Hopefully a class of 200 meditators sitting in front of me.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Okay.
Well, I mean, thanks for listening. Hopefully you all are getting stuff out of this. I mean, I appreciate y'all coming back. It's good for me too, because I get to dive in and, really get to read and research. And, so I truly appreciate like questions like that are like, all right, I gotta go a little bit deeper on the deep end, because I try to keep the scripture passage small so we can dive into them and kind of deeper dive into them. That's why we're not reading like 25 verses or something, But so yeah, I'm like, hopefully I'm trying to give at least enough food to y'all that you're getting something out of it. But I've enjoyed talking to you all and like being in class with you all. So I truly appreciate appreciate this. So
hey man, thanks for creating the space to do this. This is fun.
I'm feeling nourished by it. I'm definitely feeling nourished by it.
Good. Yeah. Well, yeah. And you guys nourish me, because it's like just getting to talk about, deeper philosophies and those type of things that kind of get your brain working. I don't know about you, Aaron, but I just stare at a computer all the time. So it's just like for work. Yeah. Exhibit A. Yeah. So it's like my mind just kind of melts and I don't get this time very often. I get my mornings where I read and I'm just like sipping on coffee and kind of just absorbing it. But to be able to interact with people and discuss is awesome. So I appreciate you all so much. So
I just had one more question. You got a minute, man?
Yeah, of course. Please.
How was 859 Fest?
It was good. Yeah, for being the first year, it was good. I think we had about 75 each night.
That's a big turnout.
Yeah. Yeah, I booked a 2-day music festival at Al's Bar, Friday and Saturday.
You invited me to it, but it was at Al's Bar and it was like 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, well, it actually the first band went on at 7, but yeah,
So
yeah,
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 it was Friday and Saturday, right?
yeah. Friday was all the
I
heavy music. Saturday was all the punk music. So yeah,
whenever you send me an invite, I always laugh because I'm like, poor Jeremiah. He has no
yeah.
idea I'm in bed by 9 p.m.
No, I am too normally. That's what's funny.
I
So
know. I know. Thank you so much for the invite. I thought
yeah,
about going, but I
it's
teach
all
Friday
good.
nights at 7. But
Yeah.
then I have to be up. Saturday, I had to be up and at this lady's house at 8 a.m. So it's
Well,
like
I'm
my
playing an
whole,
acoustic set Thursday of this week at the Fish Tank. So
I'll be at Yoga Fest.
yeah.
I'm
So
house sitting down here in Richmond till Thursday. The neighbor's taking over. The
ah,
homeowners are in Hawaii. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I go to Western Kentucky. I'm at the yoga festival for 4 days. Then I drive from Western Kentucky all the way back here to Richmond. I'm here Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at this house. The homeowners come back on Friday. And then I go to another house Friday morning and start there. Friday and Saturday, I'll be back and forth to two houses. And then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I'm at the other house.
it sounds busy. Yeah.
Not really. I'm just getting paid to live in people's houses. It's the most, it's like, that's another thing with the gardening. I'm like, I always just wanted to get paid to show up. People are
Yeah.
literally paying me to stay in their house right now.
Yeah.
And I'm getting paid to stay at this house and paid to stay at that house and, going to yoga festival, which I won't get paid, but it's all,
Yeah.
advertising, marketing. I'll be teaching and meeting people and stuff. But I also am working my regular job. So I'm like, oh my God, is this my dharma to be triple dipping in the income pool? I got income coming, I have money coming in from all angles. But
Yeah.
I got to save that
Yeah.
so I can survive the winter time. That's my
There you go.
goal.
Well, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining.
this
But
is
yeah,
excellent.
yeah,
It's good to see you, Aaron.
yeah,
And Faith, I know you're hidden in a room somewhere that Jeremiah's got you tucked away in.
yeah. She's over there.
That
But
was
yeah,
really funny. The teacher last week, and he was like, "Who is this Faith?
yeah,
Who is this?" And you're like, "Oh, she's in the room right next to me. That's my wife." And he was like,
yeah,
"Oh, that
yeah.
was hilarious. I love to see
Yeah, I
that."
forgot to ask you guys, what'd you think of HD
I
Goswami?
loved it. I loved it.
He's um he's pretty neat. I really like watching him speak, you know?
Yeah. And the rabbit holes he was going down,
Oh
it
yeah,
was
he's
like he and that he just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then
yeah.
finally, I don't know, like 20 or 25 minutes in, I was like, he doesn't even remember the original
No.
question, but he's fine.
Yeah. He's every
Yeah.
time I've seen him speak, it's been like that. I
Yeah.
do have so I had this idea that in
I could
between
have
each
listened forever too.
what's that? I'm sorry?
Oh, Faith put, he's such a jolly, happy guy. I could have listened forever. I
Oh
said, I
yeah.
could have listened forever too. When he was done at 8 o'clock and he was like, all right, I'm signing up. I was like, oh, it's just getting good.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't put us in a tense rabbit hole and leave.
I know, right? So I had this idea that in between each chapter we'd have like a little guest on. So I talked to a guy from Cincinnati. He's actually Indian. His name is HD Pandit. He is fascinating. He comes down to Lexington frequently, so I've seen him speak a few times, and he's taught like multiple Bhagavad Gita classes and stuff. But he's just such a neat guy. But I talked to him over the weekend. I was like, I'd love to have you when we're done with two, and maybe you could, because he likes to just do open, ask me anything, you know, and
Right.
type questions. And he is way more scholared and knowledgeable than me. Yeah, he has a great sense of humor too. But
Yeah. Awesome.
so I think it'd be cool to kind of have like little guest speakers once in a while and stuff to kind of feed us because, like I said, I'm still learning. I'm not perfect. I'm just like trying to dive in with everybody else and trying to learn some stuff. Because it makes me set time aside to where I can dive in and kind of read different books and different commentaries and stuff on the Gita, and it makes it really interesting. So that's one thing I will promise. Huh?
was going to say, it's always really nice, not that you're not well versed in it,
Yeah.
but this is the first class you've taught. Fast
Yeah.
forward 20 years and you're on your 20th class.
Yeah.
You know, the words, you're figuring out your words now, but
Sure.
to have
Well,
somebody well versed in it that has taught so many classes and has
Yeah.
so much experience, it's not just for us and the questions to be asked, but for you as like the teacher and the holder of
Yeah.
the space. You're hearing somebody like a master's putting their words into it, and then your
Yeah.
mind is like, okay, that was a good way to explain it, and that's how I'm going to explain it next time. You know, like you're making
well, and to me, like, I don't even really consider myself a teacher. I guess I'm like leading the class,
you
but
are.
you know,
You
it's
don't
like,
consider yourself a teacher. You're the teacher in this space. So
well, I'm more of just,
the rest of the time, but you're
I'm the guy
teacher
diving
anyway.
in to learn and then like share what I've learned.
Right, but that isn't that a teacher?
I don't know. I don't teach.
Yes, you do. That's the teacher. The teacher goes in
Yeah.
and learns the subject and then explains what they've learned and how
Yeah.
they know. And it doesn't mean that you're ever doing it wrong. You're just
Yeah.
learning.
Hey, I'm just figuring it out. That's what we're all doing here, right? We're just trying to figure it
Aren't we
out.
all? Right.
So, well, I don't want to keep any more of your time. I appreciate you all so much. So,
Thank you
Aaron, it's
so
always a
much for
pleasure to
listening.
see your face. You know.
Yeah.
To-
Hey,